I'd been with the company 18 years, Senior Vice President of Sales. The only check-ins I got these days were from board members asking for forecasts. So when I walked into conference room B and saw Laura from HR already seated, I knew exactly what kind of meeting this was. Tyler was 36, maybe 37, private equity fast track, MBA haircut, liked words like scalability and burn rate. He didn't bother with pleasantries, just got right to it. "Mark," he said, folding his hands over a leather-bound portfolio. "We've been reviewing overall cost structures across departments, and the reality is, well, you've simply become too expensive." He said it like he was reading off a dinner receipt, not unkind, not apologetic, just flat, like my name was a line item that didn't clear the budget. Laura slid a folder across the table. "Your severance package, your exit checklist, you'll have access to HR through the week. We know this is sudden." It wasn't. Not really. The late invitations to leadership calls, the vague answers when I asked about Q4 projections, the sudden realignment of regional accounts I'd nurtured for years. I wasn't blindsided, just disappointed they hadn't even tried to lie creatively. I closed the folder without looking at it, stood up, and adjusted my tie. "I understand," I said. Tyler blinked, like he'd expected more noise. I nodded once, then walked out. No anger, no indignation, just a man with 18 years of history being reduced to overhead on a spreadsheet. As I passed the receptionist, she looked up with something like confusion. "Everything okay, Mr. Anders?" "Sure," I said, pausing just long enough to smile. "Just to check in." I didn't say a word when I stepped back into my office. Just pulled out the cardboard box from the cabinet under my desk. Photograph of my wife and daughter from a beach trip years ago. Framed copy of the top national sales team award from 2015. Coffee mug that said "Forecast Whisperer." A gag gift from my team after we beat target by 48%. I packed each item with care, like they were fragile. In a way, they were. When I started, the sales division was 2 people sharing a cubicle with no windows and a borrowed printer. No CRM, no pipeline tools. We built everything from the ground up. By year 3, we'd landed our first Fortune 500 client. By year 6, we were a recognized name in enterprise sales strategy. There were nights I slept in the office. Mornings I gave pep talks in parking lots before big pitches. I'd flown coach on red eyes just to personally close with a skeptical client in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Sacramento, wherever the number needed moving. When the company hit a cash crunch during the 2008 downturn, it was my team's deals that kept us afloat. No one said it then, but I knew. I trained half the staff in this building, sat in interviews, reviewed decks, took weekend calls from reps on the verge of losing major accounts. And now? Most of them kept their heads down as I packed. 1 or 2 gave a tight nod. A junior analyst I'd mentored dropped a sticky note on my desk when I wasn't looking. It just said, "Thank you for everything." HR hovered outside my door, pretending to check her email. I didn't mind. Legacy doesn't scream when it leaves. It walks out with its shoulders straight. I closed the box and took one last look around. The office didn't look any different than it had that morning. But something had shifted. Not in the room, in me. Then I picked up the box and walked out. No send-off, no speech, just silence and the sound of 18 years becoming history. Tyler Langston arrived 2 years ago, straight from a venture-backed SaaS company that burned bright, then fizzled. He talked fast, dressed like a podcast host, and had the vocabulary of someone who thought PowerPoint decks were strategic plans. 34 years old, private equity golden boy. He wasn't here to grow something. He was here to flip it. The board brought him in to modernize operations and accelerate margin efficiency. Translation: cut costs, gut middle management, dress it all up with phrases like digital transformation and go-to-market realignment. The first time I met him, he asked me if I knew my CAC to LTV ratio offhand. I told him we didn't close clients by spreadsheet. We closed them by knowing when their fiscal year ended and what kept their VP of Ops awake at night. He laughed politely, never asked me anything again. He brought in consultants, 3 of them. One with a British accent, one who only wore black, one who never looked up from her tablet. They gave presentations in the main conference room with phrases like Salesforce optimization, reducing human friction in acquisition funnels, and my favorite, de-seniorization of legacy sales personnel. That last one was about me. Their plan involved automation, restructuring, and hiring hungry talent with lower overhead. They showed graphs proving how younger reps with AI-driven CRM tools could outperform traditional models. None of them had ever closed a 7-figure deal that started with a handshake over bad coffee in a client's lobby. But Tyler ate it up. In every meeting, he nodded like a man seeing the future. What he didn't see was that half the company's revenue still came from deals my team built. Deals maintained through relationships, trust, and knowing that some clients still preferred calls over dashboards. Tyler saw me as expensive. What he didn't see was what it would cost to replace me. The first sign was my calendar access being restricted. No notification, just a quiet view-only status on meetings I used to lead. Then the quarterly budget review came and went without my input. The numbers were cleaner than usual, like someone had removed every variable that mattered. The CRM started showing unfamiliar names assigned to accounts I'd built from scratch. Clients I'd flown out to meet, walked factory floors with, taken to dinner after 12-hour demos, now managed by junior staff who hadn't even been onboarded 6 months ago. I didn't protest. Not because I didn't care, because I already knew. Instead, I started gathering. Over the years, I'd kept copies of client history, notes from renewal calls, pipeline forecasting spreadsheets that showed the hidden architecture of our sales cycle, all stored in a secure cloud folder. Nothing proprietary, just the kind of context no algorithm could recreate. I documented how many deals relied not on discounts, but on trust. How retention rates were tied to specific reps. How every account that made up the top 40% of our revenue had personal handoffs, not automated ones. I wasn't preparing for a fight. I was just making sure that if everything fell apart, I knew exactly where every bolt had been tightened. There was no revenge in it. Just clarity. Because I've learned something in nearly 2 decades of sales. When people stop asking for your input, it means they've already decided what happens next. And when that happens, you don't argue. You get quiet. You get organized. And you wait. The severance packet arrived the next morning by email. Laura from HR followed up with a cheerful, "Just making sure you received everything. Let us know if you have questions." I opened the file and scrolled. 18 pages, legal boilerplate. Severance pay based on base salary, not bonuses, not commissions. Standard COBRA continuation. Then came the fine print. A 12-month non-compete covering every company I'd ever spoken to. A broad intellectual property waiver that would assign ownership of anything I'd conceptualized while employed, including process notes, frameworks, even sales scripts I'd created years ago. The whole thing was written like I'd stolen trade secrets instead of driving year-over-year revenue growth for nearly 2 decades. I didn't respond. I forwarded the documents to Rebecca, my attorney. We'd worked together when I helped a friend navigate a merger gone sideways. She called back 20 minutes later. "They think you're desperate," she said, "or stupid. Possibly both." I asked her to review everything. No rush. 2 hours later, Tyler called. "Hey, Mark. Just wanted to touch base. Saw the paperwork was sent over. It's standard stuff. Legal formality, you know how it is." "Sure," I said. Just trying to keep things professional. Smooth landing, no drama." "I'll get back to you," I said. He paused. I could hear the smirk flatten. "Of course. Take your time." We both knew what this was. They weren't offering severance, they were buying silence, and they'd priced it low. The first call came 2 days later. A longtime client in Atlanta, Marissa, head of procurement at a logistics firm. We'd worked together since 2012. "Mark," she said, skipping hello. "Who's this new guy? Carter? He just tried to pitch us using last year's spec sheets. And when I asked about our volume-based rebate, he looked confused." I kept my tone neutral. "We had some internal changes. I'm no longer with the company." Marissa was quiet for a beat. "Damn shame," she said finally. "We didn't buy your product. We bought your word." Later that afternoon, another call. Greg from Oregon, retail tech client. We'd closed our first deal on a handshake and a napkin sketch. "Is it true?" he asked. "You're gone?" "I am." "Well," he said, "I'll tell you right now, we're not renewing without a serious conversation. We only did business because of you. What happened?" I gave the only answer I could. Company priorities shifted. Happens sometimes. It wasn't untrue. After I hung up, I opened a spreadsheet and started taking notes. Not out of spite, out of habit. Client name, contract size, renewal date, key dependencies. I wasn't planning anything, but if I was going to be replaced, someone should at least know who they were losing. By the end of the week, the industry knew. News travels fast when it doesn't come from a press release. The whispers started on LinkedIn. A former colleague tagged me in a post about big shifts in leadership. Then came the DMs. "You really gone? Say it ain't so. We should talk." By Monday, the messages turned into calls. 3 former competitors, 2 boutique firms, and a VC-backed startup I'd once outbid for a telecom client, all reaching out. "Let's grab coffee," they said. "We'd love to have someone like you on board. We can talk equity if you're open to something strategic." It was flattering. Strategic VPs, CRO tracks, advisory board seats. Some were offering more than I'd ever made in salary, but none of them knew the full story. I didn't correct them, because I wasn't looking for a new job. Not yet. I was watching the ripples, tracking which clients reached out, which partners hesitated on renewals, which competitors were suddenly sniffing around accounts that used to be locked in with me. Every conversation I took was a ledger entry. Every offer was leverage, not for revenge, just for clarity. The kind that only comes when people show you what they think you're worth. And for the first time in a long time, I had the time and the distance to really pay attention. It started with a contract, $12.3 million, multi-year, anchored most of Q2's revenue forecasts. Gone. The official reason was a breakdown in communication during transition. The unofficial reason was that nobody called Martech Solutions back for 2 weeks after I left, and when someone finally did, they couldn't answer basic questions about integration timelines. I got the news from a friend still inside. His text just said, "You picked a hell of a week to walk." Inside the company, the mood shifted fast. Tyler called an emergency all hands, the kind where he uses the word pivot 5 times in the first minute. Half the sales team didn't even understand what was lost. The other half panicked. Junior reps scrambled to reassign accounts they didn't know how to maintain. Deals stalled. Contracts wobbled. And for the first time, Tyler realized that the thing he cut to save money had been the thing holding it all together. I didn't gloat, but I did check my phone. And wait. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mark," he said, too cheerfully. "Tyler, hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I didn't say anything for a second. Let the silence breathe. "No worse than usual," I said. He laughed, a little too loud. "Hey, listen, I've been thinking. Wondered if you'd be open to grabbing coffee sometime. Just a casual thing. No pressure." "Why?" "Well, with everything going on, I just think your perspective could really help. You know the clients, the flow, the rhythm. Maybe you could come in as a consultant, short-term of course. Just help us stabilize a bit." Stabilize. That was a polite way of saying plug the holes before we sink. I kept my tone even. "Now's not a good time." "Totally get it," he said too quickly. "Just, if you change your mind, I'd be happy to talk numbers. You name the rate. This could be good for both of us." It already was, I thought. Just not in the way he meant. "I'll let you know," I said. Then hung up. I didn't need coffee. I needed to know how bad it really was. I met Angela at a diner off the interstate. She ran mid-market sales before she was restructured 3 months back. Then Jared, former director of onboarding, left after budget cuts killed half his team. We all ordered coffee. Nobody drank it. "Tyler's desperate," Angela said. "He's reporting inflated pipeline numbers to the board, using deals we already closed last quarter and just renaming them." Jared nodded. "He's got junior reps recycling templates you built for enterprise clients. They're pitching 6-figure platforms with entry-level scripts." I asked about the CRM. Jared shook his head. "Data's a mess. No tagging, no notes, no transfer plans. It's like no one bothered to open your documentation." They hadn't. Because when I left, no one asked where it lived. I kept everything: client preferences, renewal flags, negotiation history. But it was in my system, not theirs. Not out of secrecy, out of habit. Because no one ever asked for it. They assumed process lived on paper. But process lived in people. And the people who understood it were already gone. I still had Robert Gaines's number, board member, early investor, and the only executive who ever asked real questions during Q&A. We'd worked closely on a product expansion 5 years back. He respected data, so I compiled a file. No commentary, no bitterness, just the numbers. A detailed performance breakdown showing current pipeline slippage, client churn forecasts, and Q3 revenue projections down 38% if even half the current accounts walked. Included client names, deal cycles, missed SLAs, support gaps. I didn't exaggerate, didn't dramatize, just showed the trajectory. At the bottom of the file, I added one note. None of this is proprietary. All of it was preventable. I created a temporary encrypted email account and hit send. Nothing happened for 3 days, then whispers. A canceled investor luncheon. Tyler's calendar cleared for a full day of executive sessions. By Friday, a rumor reached me through someone still inside. The board is asking questions, real ones. Because at a certain point, a polished deck doesn't matter if the numbers don't land. And Tyler's numbers weren't landing. They were falling. Fast. By mid-month, the pressure had cracked the surface. Tyler brought in a new wave of consultants. Turnaround specialists in Navy suits who talked like Navy SEALs and operated like traffic cops. They cut support hours, slashed renewals team headcount, tried to push quarterly renewals into monthly commitments to increase agility. It backfired. Clients walked. 3 major ones. Combined, they accounted for nearly $19 million in active contracts. The worst part? They didn't even complain. They just left. Internally, panic set in. Junior reps burned out. Mid-level managers stopped defending decisions they didn't understand. Slack channels turned silent. And then, Tyler called again. This time, no preamble, no charm. Mark, please, just a few hours of your time. That's all I'm asking. His voice had changed. Lighter, tighter, like someone realizing the brakes had failed and they were still accelerating downhill. I let the silence stretch long enough to let him feel it. I'll think about it, I said. Then I hung up. Not because I was being cruel, because sometimes the only way to be heard is to say nothing at all. We met at a hotel lounge halfway across the city, neutral ground. I arrived 5 minutes early. Tyler was already there, pacing. He'd lost weight. Tie loosened, smile tight. He stood when I walked in. Mark, he said, extending a hand. Appreciate you making the time. I shook it, but didn't sit. Not yet. He launched in. We've had some setbacks, but we're stabilizing. The board agrees we need experience at the helm, someone who understands legacy clients and long-term cycles. I waited. Let him fill the silence. We're offering you a new role, whatever you want to call it. EVP, consultant, strategic partner. You name your number. Equity options, sign-on bonus, flexible scope. He slid a branded folder across the table. I didn't open it. Instead, I reached into my coat and placed a thin manila file in front of him. 1 page. Chief Sales Officer, board seat. Full operational autonomy. Performance-based equity at 3 times market value. Nothing more. Tyler scanned it, lips tightening. This is a lot. No, I said calmly. It's what it takes. He opened his mouth to push back. I leaned forward slightly. You don't need a favor, Tyler. You need a foundation. Someone who knows where the revenue lives. Someone who's not guessing. He said nothing. You need me, I said. Not the other way around. I sat with the offer for a week. Didn't touch it. Didn't revise a word. Instead, I took long walks. Checked in with people I trusted. Slept. Thought. 18 years at one company leaves a mark. Not all of it good, not all of it bad. Going back would mean control and cleaning up a mess I didn't make. Starting fresh would mean freedom, but building from scratch. Again. Then the calls came. First from Marissa in Atlanta, then from Greg in Oregon, 2 clients, multi-million-dollar accounts. "We heard you're fielding offers," Greg said. "Wherever you land, we follow." No hesitation, no negotiation, just trust. The kind you can't fake with a slide deck. I looked down at Tyler's signed counteroffer. The power was mine now, not out of revenge, out of proof. I didn't just build a book of business. I built belief. The sun was just starting to edge past the skyline, that soft, golden stretch before the day officially starts. I stood by the window in my new office, coffee in hand, watching the city wake up. Down below, traffic moved like clockwork, a rhythm I no longer answered to. Behind me, my phone buzzed. One new message. Tyler. His voice cracked through the speaker, tight with urgency, the polished CEO cadence completely gone. "Mark, we're bleeding. Another 2 accounts are threatening to walk. The board's circling. I need you. Just call me back, please. We can figure this out." The message ended in static. I didn't replay it. Didn't save it. Just deleted it. Then I turned, took one last sip of coffee and walked toward the desk that now belonged to me. The walls were bare, still waiting to be filled. Not with awards, not with legacy, but with something new. Something built on my terms, a private firm, advisory and consulting, a few hand-picked clients, selective, focused, quietly powerful. No titles to chase, no boards to impress. Just value, delivered without noise. On the wall across from my desk, mounted in a dark wooden frame, hung a simple sign. Nothing flashy. "Don't fire the guy who built the bridge you're standing on." It had been a gift from one of the junior reps I mentored years ago. I never forgot that line. Now it was the first thing I saw every morning. Outside, the city kept moving. Fast, loud, restless. Inside, it was still, controlled, mine. I sat down, opened a fresh folder, and started the next chapter. No drama, no fireworks. Just the quiet satisfaction of a man who didn't burn a bridge. He just walked away and built a better one. This story was brutal, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.